Pesachim Daf Mem Aleph, 40 Daf into Masechtas Pesachim. We have a few pictures here. One is of Levi Nachman Simon from Seattle, Washington. Today is his Boy Bayoim, putting on tefillin. Here he is watching the Daf. Also, Noam Heyman just arrived in Eretz Yisrael. He's in quarantine in a hotel. He's making Aliyah from Australia. Welcome. And we have Mr. Anonymous, who had a baby girl yesterday, and he's learning the Daf with his daughter, and he writes he only got 3 hours of sleep. It's only because he's learning the Daf that he's able to learn Torah every day. So Mazel Tov to everyone, 3 Mazel Tovs, beautiful. The Mishnah tells us that you cannot cook a Korban Pesach even in juices, apple juice, orange juice, grape juice. How do we know this? Either from a Kal V'chomer or from a pasuk. The Gemara says the Kal V'chomer is the Torah says you cannot cook the Korban Pesach in water. Water doesn't impart any flavor, nevertheless it's also so certainly if you add flavor, take away from the flavor of the meat, it certainly should be also. Rebbe says, I have a pasuk. It says V'vashal mevushal twice, the same lashon, so it teaches me any type of bishul, any type of cooking, even that of juice. So what do Chacham do V'vashal mevushal? To teach us, even if you roasted the Korban Pesach like you're supposed to, and only later you put it and you cooked it in water, it's still also if you eat it, you get malchus. And the reverse is true as well. You cooked it, then roasted it, it doesn't matter, you're over. Now, how do we know this? Reb Yossi says that if you have something that's baked, like a matzah, and you soak it, you cook it, you're not yaitza matzah. In other words, baking and then cooking, the cooking undoes the baking. So too by Korban Pesach. The cooking after roasting will undo the roasting, and the roasting after cooking is certainly no good because you cooked it, and therefore you are over. If you singe, you burn the Korban Pesach, you don't do a nice roast, you overcook it, and you eat it, you are not over. Because it says in the pasuk, no, only if you eat it rear or cooked, then you are over. The pasuk tells us 3 lavim. There's 2 that are very specific, and 1 is very general. The one specific, as we just discussed, eating it raw is specific, cooking it in water is specific. Then the Torah says, Kim tzli, it has to be roasted. So from here we learn anything else other than roasted, you're also over. So there are 2 things in that category that are not really mentioned in the Torah. One of them is, what if you eat the meat raw, completely raw? It's not rare, it's raw. That would be included in Kim tzli. You have to roast it. You didn't roast it, so you are over. Now, according to this man Damar, you don't get malchus because Kim tzli, since it's such a general lav, you don't get malchus in such a lav. Then we have another thing that's very similar, but it goes according to another mandamar. Chamei Tveria, that are the hot springs in Tveria or anywhere else. If you cook in the hot springs, you don't have a fire as the source of energy, it comes from another source. Therefore, you are chayev a malchus because it's included in tzli. According to this mandamar, that you could get malchus on lav shebeklalis, on a general lav, you get malchus. So, if you cook in Chamei Tveria in a hot spring on Shabbos, you are potter because you didn't cook on a flame, you cooked on a derivative of the sun or some heat source from the ground. But if you cook your Korban Pesach and eat it, then you're chayev malchus because the Torah says Kim tzli, it has to be roasted, and this is not roasted. If a person eats the Korban Pesach when it's rear, he's over on 2 isurim. One on the general lav, tzli, it has to be roasted, and one on the specific lav, do not eat it when it's rear. If one eats it when it's cooked, he's over on 2 lavim. One on the general lav of Kim tzli, has to be roasted, and one on the specific one, do not eat it when it's cooked. And if one eats 2 kazesim, one is raw and one is cooked, he could be over on 3 lavim. No, mevushal, and Kim tzli. Abaye says, but you don't get malchus on lav shebeklalis. So there's 2 explanations. Either it means to say that when you have a very specific lav like no and mevushal, you don't add a second lav of Kim tzli. However, if you don't have any lav at all, it's Chamei Tveria, for instance, or it's raw, then you could invoke the lav shebeklalis. Then you would be over on Kim tzli. The only time you don't do Kim tzli is when you have another lav. Or you could learn, no, you never get malchus on a lav shebeklalis. You never get malchus because of Kim tzli. So Chamei Tveria and raw, you wouldn't get malchus according to that second lashon. The halacha is that the Korban Pesach is not eaten with 2 different groups. You can only be part of one group, and you can't eat the Korban Pesach in 2 different places. So if a person were to eat a kazayis of roasted Korban Pesach Erev Pesach, which is usher to eat the Korban Pesach before Pesach. Since it's usher, it's not considered that you ate it, and therefore it doesn't ruin your chabura. You could join your group. Now, you could learn a Kavachaimer that eating raw Korban Pesach Erev Pesach would be 100% usher. If it's usher at night, it certainly should be usher before Pesach. You could also learn logically that it's mutter. It's only usher at night, but before Pesach it's mutter. Therefore, we need a pasuk, and the pasuk says Ki'im tzliyesh. But the pasuk right before that says the same thing. You have to roast your Korban Pesach. So why the double lashon here? To tell us that it's only when there's a mitzvah to eat the Korban Pesach roasted, in other words, at the Seder, then you have an Aveira eating it raw. But Erev Pesach, when you don't have a mitzvah to eat it roasted, actually it's an Aveira, then there's no Aveira to eat it when it's rear. I should say rear, not raw. Rebbe says from the word mevushal, now if you take a look, it says uvashal mevushal. So number one, we have the same word twice, but it's also written differently, so therefore Rebbe has two drushes from it. First of all, that if you put the meat directly into the pot without any juices, and it cooks in itself, you're also over if you eat it like that. It has to be roasted, not cooked. And if you use all mashkim, you are over. And finally, the halacha that if you cook it before Pesach, that's also asur to eat on Leil HaSeder. Have a wonderful day.